Good morning. This is BCP's Eastern Planning Committee of the 1st of August, and I hand over to Democratic Services for housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we'll move to item 1, apologies.
So apologies have been received from Councillor Joe Clements and Councillor Joe Salmon, and substitute members, Councillor Sarah Armstrong is here for Councillor Salmon today.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm Councillor Paul Hilliard, the chair of the committee. I'll just introduce, each member will introduce themselves.
I'm Marion Lepedvin and I'm vice chair of committee.
Councillor Michael Tarling, Christchurch Ward, Christchurch Town.
Councillor Felicity Race, Oakdale Ward.
Councillor Gillian Martin, Boscombe West.
Councillor Sarah Armstrong, East Cliff and Springbourne Ward.
Lawrence Williams, councillor for Littledown, Nyford.
Councillor David Flagg, Burton Grange Ward.
Matt Gillett, Talbot Woods.
Thank you. We're also joined by planning officers Piotr Kulik, Catherine Ashley and Tom Hudbird, along with Peter Burridge and senior solicitor Robert Thurth, along with Jill Hollyoak, Democratic Services. So moving to item 3, are there any declarations of interest on the items? No, thank you. And then confirmation of the minutes of the 8th of July 2024. Any issues or statements on those? All happy to agree?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Public issues. So after the officer presentation, we will hear any public speakers followed by any ward councillors who wish to speak. So moving to schedule of planning applications, 6A, Royal Arcade. Mr. Kulik, please.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. Let me just quickly share the presentation. Hopefully you can see PowerPoint presentation, but let me just. Can you hear me? Can you see that presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so we've got the application at Royal Arcade, and the proposal is for change of both the ground floor and upper floors to mixed E-class and F-class uses. Going to the location, so the application site relates to the Grade 2 listed Royal Arcade, which is located in Boscombe District Centre, and also within the Boscombe Core Strategy shopping area. The surrounding area is characterised by many historic buildings, which make an important contribution to the character and appearance of the area. On this slide, we can see the surrounding properties, which is O2 Venue, shopping centre, and also we can see there are 2 side entrances. One is located along the High Street, which is Christchurch Road, and the other entrance is Palmerston Road. In terms of the Royal Arcade, it was originally designated around the workshop time retail units with living accommodation above. Currently, we have E-class uses with ancillary storage spaces within the basement level. There are there's a mix of E-class and F-class uses on ground floor level. And then in terms of upper floors, we have a mix of E-class as residential uses. Just on following slides, we can see the existing sites, some photos taken internally. In terms of upper floors, stated already, they have been historically used for residential purposes and also for office uses. And basically, historically, the upper floors were used for office spaces, retail stores, storage associated with shopping units on ground floor level within the last 30 years. It should be noted that number of units have the upper floor units have remained vacant within the last authorized use of some of those units is residential. Just to show further photos taken during the site visit, so we can see the entrance from Palmerston Road and some back elevation of the site. On those slides, we can see Google Earth shots just showing the wider view towards the application site, and we've got reference photos showing the entrance to the site. Another view from Google Earth, again, second entrance to the application site, and then another view towards the shopping centre and back of the site with some photos taken during the site visit. On this slide, we can see a 3D model. It's basically a reference 3D model just to showing the proposed works. And generally speaking, the application relates to refurbishment and repairs of the Royal Arcade with the aim of restoring the entire building and bringing it back into use through refurbishment project, which is currently underway in this part of Boscombe. In terms of elevation plans, existing and proposed, limited changes proposed through this scheme. So the existing footprint wouldn't be altered. Also the proposed works affecting the external envelope of the building will be limited to reinstating currently blocked windows and doors at ground floor level, and also all brickwork would be restored and repointed through this scheme. So again, we can see elevation south existing and proposed, no changes to those elevations. Southeast proposed and existing elevations, we can see here there will be proposed PV panels, and as mentioned already, there will be some changes to ground floor doors and windows. On the next slide, we can see those changes which will be related to doors and windows that will be reinstated through this scheme. I just want to make a note that there was a previous approval for conversion of some of the upper floors to form 11 flats. This scheme hasn't been implemented. In terms of the proposed uses on site as well, those existing, we can see on this table that mainly the existing basement level, it's occupied by E-class uses with ancillary storage spaces. Ground floor, it's located for a mix of E and F-class uses, and we can see also some residential uses on first, second, and third floor, as well as E-class uses on first and second floor. In terms of the proposal, we've got predominantly proposed E-class uses. And in terms of the scheme, the ground floor units will be occupied by a range of retail uses and food offerings associated with the proposed food court area. I just want to make a note that under the current use class order, E-class is a flexible use for commercial businesses and services, and F-class use again is a flexible use for local community and learning facilities. just to run through the existing floor plans. As a point of reference, we can see the green is E-class, F class is pink, and bluish is residential. So we can see again mainly E-class uses with some F class uses on ground floor level, and upper floors there's a mix of residential uses which are in blue and E-class uses which are in green, and the third floor is residential use. So just going to the existing internal floors. Those photos presented here has been taken by the applicant and form part of the submitted design and access statement. And as we can see, the condition of those floors is very poor and required some refurbishment works. All those internal changes due to being set within the grade 2 listed building will be discussed further by the Council's Heritage Officer in next presentation, which relates to listed building. And I just want to make a note that existing upper floors has been vacant for over 10 years, and despite of some identified conflict with policies, safe policies 6.3 and 6.4, the lawful residential units are not considered to be habitable in practical terms, and as shown on those internal photos taken by the applicant, most of those upper floors are in very poor condition. Going to the scheme, as noted already, the current lawful use of upper floors is combination of historic and residential units, and most permission, as noted already, granted in 2010 was for residential use, which has never been implemented. And proposed works would change those upper floors to E-class and up to 400 square meters of F-class use. And it should be noted that those F-class uses has not been noted on those plans just to give some flexibility in the future, and obviously for future uses that there will be some specific units allocated for that. In terms of proposed uses, as we can see, just going to this previous table, we've got predominantly E-class uses proposed on both basement and ground floor level. In terms of proposed first floor and second floor and third floor level, we got E-class uses, and as I said already, there will be some allocated F-class uses within the scheme as well. On this section drawing, we can see again there will be mix of uses within the Royal Arcade with food court within the main section of the ground floor level, with some office spaces and communal spaces on upper floor levels. Just to summarize, the NPPF confirms that uses such as those proposed E-class and F-class are suitable within the core shopping areas. There's also identified within the scheme identified social economic benefits following from this scheme, which will introduce a mix of uses. Also, this type of diversification, flexible uses will help to reduce vacant rates and allow wider uses within the existing site. Also, as noted already, the loss of residential units is acknowledged, and there will be some conflict with some local planning policies. However, it is considered that the wider benefit in form of refurbishment of this historic heritage asset and introduction of mixed units within the site would outweigh the loss of historical residential uses within the upper floors. And also there's a clear public benefit by preserving the existing heritage asset. Therefore, the scheme is considered to be acceptable and in line with both local and national planning policies, and the recommendation is planning approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kulik. Mrs. Ashley, did you want to come in at this time, add anything on heritage, or during a debate?
I'm happy to speak about the sort of external appearance of the building and the internals. It might be better as part of the listed building application, I think, Chair.
It's fine, thank you. So moving on to speakers, we have an objector, Mr. Stanley Watts, if you'd like to come to the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Today I wear many hats. I am a neighbour of this building. I also am a trustee of Civic Voice, which is a heritage protection organisation. And I'm also speaking apparently on behalf of some of the businesses, as a relative of mine had a business in the Royal Arcade. And I'm speaking against plan application for this proposal for change of use. This change of use would have a negative impact on this important part of retail heritage. There seems to be a lack of understanding on the council's part with the creation of the food hall, which would be unworkable, in my opinion, and pop-up eateries. I think it's for all the wrong reasons. This type of building, as everybody knows, should be for businesses like antiques businesses and hairdressers, businesses like the Science Zone, which is very important. But mixed office use and startup business use in this digital age might not work well together. And do the council not know there's a housing crisis and the option should be open, and flat buildings should be one of the options used in this restoration of this building? The retail businesses that operate in the Royal Arcade are part and parcel of its attraction. And it would be detrimental for the arcade. And we live in the age of online retail shopping, but the many independent businesses attract visitors and collectors, vinyl records, antiques, china, not only the Royal Arcade, but Boscombe itself. And not forgetting the Science Zone, which has been a massive attraction in bringing footfall into the Boscombe area. And also the Wellness Cafe, which is an important social enterprise in the Boscombe area. I urge members to refuse this change of use.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley Watts. We now have Ward Councillor, Councillor Canavan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name's Councillor Patrick Canavan. I'm councillor in Boscombe West. Very fortunate to have the Royal Arcade in my ward. I think it's a truly fabulous place. I wanted to speak on this item primarily because of the change of use, which has just been referred to. If you are going to separate out the heritage aspects onto the next item, I wasn't intending to speak on the next item, but I might have to. Just so that you're clear, Chair, I have been inside this place and have gone up and down the staircases that are referred to in the paperwork. Have seen the old chimneys, the old fireplaces, and the state of disrepair that this building is internally. And the planning officers referred to the previous application, or a previous application, in terms of installing flats there, which for whatever reason has not been progressed. But that doesn't mean to say it can't be. So the problem with the Royal Arcade, in my view, is that it has just been neglected over a very significant period of time, and it's fallen into considerable disrepair, especially internally. And that neglect and disrepair is really partly due to lack of investment, also partly due to the rather complicated arrangements around who owns this place and who leases parts of it. I don't think any of that has really helped the Royal Arcade in terms of its future development. But when the council decided not to proceed with the compulsory purchase of the Royal Arcade, in my view, this was a really significant lost opportunity to do something with what is a truly magnificent building. And of course, money was the key factor. But what we're left with is the need to do something. And I've been coming to these meetings often enough to know now that you will consider this application based on the application that is in front of you and not what I would like it to be. But changing the use means that you're going to lose the opportunity to have flats in this space. And I think that is a really significant loss. So when we were all looking at our respective wards in the development of the local plan and looking for spaces where we could develop, this was clearly, in my mind, one opportunity. Boscombe has, shall we say, is well served with one-bedroom flats, and what it really needs are residential properties that are more available for families, 2 and 3 bedroom properties. And what you see when you enter that space where the photographs were is how big it is. And there is a real opportunity in that space to create 2 and 3 bedroom family accommodations. So the change of use, in my view, would be a significant lost opportunity. This isn't to say, I'm not arguing with I'm sure the officers have done the work to say they think there's a demand for this kind of office space. I mean, I doubt it, but that doesn't really matter what I think. That's the application in front of you, but it's the change of use that I'm seeking to get you to oppose, because if you grant it, it means that you have lost forever probably the opportunity to use that space for residential accommodation, and in Boscombe that is pretty rare. So thank you, Chair, for that.
Thank you, Councillor Canavan. Okay, so we're first of all, Mr. Kulik, was there anything you want to add from either the objector statement or from the councillor statement?
Maybe in terms of first speaker, maybe I could just show, just for clarification, what means Class E and Class F under the current use class order, because like antique shops or vinyl records referred by the objector, those uses can be introduced on site, because E-Class and especially E-Class provides lots of flexibility. So maybe just a point of reference, I'll just quickly show exactly what is included within those use classes. You see that?
So yeah, a little bit small.
Okay, all right.
But that's fine. If you just talk on through it, that'd be great.
Yeah, hopefully you can see that now. Yeah, so just in terms of the list of uses within this E-Class order, so we've got typical retail, so goods, and also some hot foods sales, and also there are financial services, professional services. There are also some recreational uses proposed under the use class order. But what I'm trying to say, a scheme wouldn't be limited just for food uses and some office spaces. There is some mix of uses under those use class orders.
Okay, that was useful. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so we're open to.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just want to make a point of clarification about something which was said. We obviously have the 2 applications. We're looking at the planning application at the moment, and we also have a listed building application, which we'll be looking at in a minute. But that's not to say that heritage is not an issue in the planning application. It is an issue which we need to consider, but the listed building application will drill down into aspects of the proposal that need listed building consent. But heritage is an issue which we should be considering as part of the planning application.
Thanks for clarifying that. So open to Councillor Williams first.
Oh, thank you.
I'm quite concerned that planning app was granted 10 years ago for residential and nothing's been done. What's to say that we grant this change of use and nothing's done for another 10 years? I'm concerned that we're going to lose the opportunity, as the ward councillor has said, for housing. I'm not keen on the idea of losing the housing element. I'm very keen on the development.
Is there a question?
Yeah, I guess the question is why are we looking at losing housing when there's a shortage of housing?
Mr. Kulik, did you have anything on why that 2014 application didn't progress?
Unfortunately, no. Many of those reasons are not planning consideration. I would say so. Probably it's caused by mixed of site owners, etc. But obviously this scheme does not relate to residential development. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that. So it hasn't been implemented in the application. The approval expired already.
Okay, Mr. Kulik, thanks for that. Any other point, Councillor Williams? No. Councillor Tarling?
No, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's more for you, Chair. Is there a possibility to consider these two together? It seems very odd to consider this first full application on the point where, as the officer just mentioned, there is a heritage aspect, and we're then going to hear a listed building consent discussion afterwards. For me, it seems, I'd hate to come to a conclusion based on the planning application to then find that I went the other way on the listed building consent. Secondly, I'm really disappointed that there's no representation from the applicant here. This isn't the first time that the council has made an application and we've not heard from the applicant. I'm slightly bemused why we have no representation from the applicant, why we're doing this scheme. Thank you.
So, Mr. Firth or Mr. Burrows, did you want to say why we take the application separately with heritage? No.
Sorry, I'm slightly confused because I'm not sure that was the question that was put, Chair. But so I'll try and cover the question you asked. So again,
no. So the two-part question. The first one was saying why we have it two items. Why are they two applications separate?
So if we're talking about the difference between listed building consent and a planning application, so listed building consent is concerned with a simple question, which is whether you're focusing your mind on the works that are being carried out to the listed building, and as a matter of law, those need consent to the extent they affect the building as a building of special architectural or historic interest. So that's what the listed building consent is concerned with. It's very much concerned with the works that are being carried out and the way they impact on the listed building. As far as the planning application is concerned, in heritage terms, what you're assessing is the impact of the proposal on the significance of the listed building. So significance can arise in a variety of different ways, and I'm sure that can be explained to you. So it's a different assessment. So, and often what you will find, Chair, and to a certain extent it applies in this case, is that works which require listed building consent, which often are, and sometimes in this case, internal works, they wouldn't necessarily require planning permission, because generally speaking, internal works don't require planning permission. But in this sense, they're being drawn in to a certain extent because I suspect some of those works are necessary to facilitate the change of use. So I think that's the technical legal answer. I'm not sure that really necessarily helps give clarity, but I think the difference is, Chair, what you need to focus on here is what is the significance of the listed building? Why is it being listed? What's its relevance? And that's something no doubt that advice can be given to. And if you think this adversely affected the significance of listed building, that is what you should be focusing on as far as the planning permission is concerned, or planning application is concerned, as opposed to specifically the works themselves and whether they're acceptable, whether they cause harm to the building for the reasons it was listed.
And we'll take away the feedback about lack of representation from the applicant. Did you want to come back, Councillor Tarling?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. And yes, I do understand that. I have read both reports, and I don't think you can consider one in isolation of the other. I do accept if this was a straightforward listed building application to do internal works or to change a window from one type to the other, that it would be a straightforward listed building consent. But the two are so closely bound. I just asking the chair whether at the point of discussion with the planning officers, whether it was worth considering hearing both sets of representation before debating them both together, because I can't really to me, if I was to decide or give an opinion either way on the first application, it would actually reference the second one. So, would I be predetermined by stating in the first one that I have an opinion this way, and then we hear a later debate on the listed building consent, and then say, well, I'd have to stand down because I'm predetermined, because if I say something about the heritage aspects in the first debate, I would then be effectively predetermined. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Firth.
So, Chair, perhaps the answer is then you do indeed have your heritage officer sitting here. So perhaps what you can do is have an explanation as to why she thinks it's significance of the asset and why she's, I believe, not supporting this application in relation to its impact on listed building. That will inevitably, I think, touch upon some of the issues that will come up in the listed building consent as well. But I think if she can explain it in that context, that will give the information that
So,
hopefully
Mrs. Ashley, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to actually run through my presentation and at this stage? Okay, let me just.
I understand our members of the public also have a second statement on the listed building consent, and I don't wish to make your life even more complicated, Chair, but you've obviously still got to follow the
we will have them separate as per the agenda, but Mrs. Ashley will cover the heritage presentation now, and then for the next application, if we need to delve further, then we can take that. But yeah, we will continue to take them separate, so speakers will be separate. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. As Mr. Firth has said, the listed building application differs from the planning application because it's considered on the impact of the works on the special interest and significance of the building. It's also worth noting as well that the listing covers the building both internally and externally. So we're very interested in what is actually happening inside it. In terms of its architectural and historic interest, the building dates back to 1892. It was listed in 1976 as being of national importance. It's an L-shaped shopping arcade which dates to the Victorian period when Boscombe grew quite rapidly as an area, and it was designed by the architects Lawson and Donkin, who are also have been involved in other buildings in the area, such as the Eastcliff United Reformed Church and the Richmond Hill United Reformed Church on Bourne Avenue. So they're quite a notable architect locally. The arcade, you're probably well aware, is a very striking building. It's the focal point in Boscombe High Street and gives a sense of grandeur to both Palmerston Road and Christchurch Road elevations. It's a brick building with stone detailing. The front facade has got an ornate balcony, and we can see from the views of the side and the rear, it's got quite an impressive roofscape as well, with the dormers, excuse me, and the chimneys. Internally, it's also of high interest and significance. It reflects the original layout with the shop units on the ground floor, which historically would have had staircases in all of the units leading up to the accommodation in the floors above. So the shops and their layout is quite important in terms of the historic interest of the building. They have, they're quite notable with the curved shop window with the glass, and they're very well detailed. They make a key contribution. I've just got this plan up here of the first floor, but I just wanted to illustrate. I don't know if my cursor, yeah, we can see historically the plan form of the building is also important. So we're talking about the internal arrangement and layout. You can see that the divisions are quite uniform in nature. If we look at this leg here, we've got the staircases grouped together. We've got these thicker elements here which relate to the chimneys that go up through the buildings and would have had the fireplaces there. So the plan form and how it's laid out is very important to the building. Some of the other features of interest. sorry, just there we go. Yeah. So some of the other features of interest internally, we can see on the left-hand side, we've got the staircases with their decorative balustrade. Centre top, you've got one of the 4-panel doors. You can see the cornicing, the skirting. Top right, you've got some nice moulding to the ceilings. And then on the bottom, you've got some of the nice windows, which are a major characteristic of the building as well. You've got the timber flooring, and bottom left, you've got the mantelpiece, the chimney stack as it comes through the building, and obviously you've got the nice fireplace around there. So these are some of the sort of highlights of the building, if you like, which needs the impact of the proposed works upon these features and needs to be taken into account. Now, the planning officers obviously outlined some of the details which relate to aspects of the scheme, such as the photovoltaics, which are on the outside of the building. So that's also picked up by the listed building application, but the listed building application is also concerned by the provision of the lifts, the toilets and the bin store in the ground floor retail units, the replacement and new suspended ceilings in the ground floor, changes to the internal layout of the upper floors, the installation of services such as ventilation, because as you can see from the photos, it's a fairly stripped out the building. So that's and in addition to that, repairs and refurbishment, and that's goes into detail in the officer's report. But I thought it might be quite helpful for members just to go into one of the key aspects of the scheme, which has the most harmful impact in terms of the listed building application, and that relates to the use of the ground floor retail units to provide the lifts, bin stores and toilets. So I've just taken the part of the building just to demonstrate this. So that we've got Palmerston Road frontage here, and the Sovereign Centre access is here. So with regards to the bin stores, you can see, obviously in association with the scheme, refuse provision is needed. So here we have partitions to go across the shop retail unit so that the bins can be provided and screened from the shop, can be shielded from the shop. So when you're walking through the arcade, you won't realise that there is a bin store hidden behind, and that also retains the frontage of these two units here. With regards to the toilets, there are 2 areas of toilets here. Again, the use of a front partition to basically hide, obviously, the cubicles behind and the facilities there. And it's the applicant's proposed to have an active shop display, if you like, to mitigate the impact of that. And then to this is one of 2 lifts. The other lift is further out of view, but the principles is the same in that the lift is located more or less in the centre of the unit. It is intended to be effectively fully glazed, which will hopefully reduce the impact in that you can ascertain the features of the rooms with the cornice and the skirting detail, and it's clearly read as a modern intervention there. So that's considered to hopefully reduce the impact of that, and it won't affect any historic cornicing or skirting around the edge of the room. This is just showing the lift. If we look at that just here as it goes up through the building, this is on the 1st floor, and here again we've got the same lift on the 2nd floor. And then this is a cross section showing the lift as it goes through the building, providing access to the upper floors. Yeah, just leave it on that one. So these are alterations. There's no question that they are harmful to the listed building, but they have to be weighed against the benefits of the scheme. And the main benefit arising is the use and occupation of the upper floors and the associated repairs and refurbishment that will be required before the upper floors can be occupied. So this slide here shows in a bit more detail some of the the areas of concern in relation to the conditions of building. We've got missing floorboards, we've got missing fireplaces, we've got fireplaces that are in place but they're not actually up against the wall. We've got ceilings, you can see the exposed laths there where the plaster has come off and plaster has come off the walls. We've got openings through various parts of the building that have literally just been made through the brick wall. We've got the staircases. Obviously, you can see they haven't got any balustrade. Again, we've got cracking, wallpaper coming off. It's the condition of the building is such, obviously reflecting the fact that it hasn't been occupied, and it does need some form of investment. And the scheme that's proposed will enable that to happen, because the building can't be occupied until these necessary works are done. And it has to be acknowledged as well that whatever use happens in this building, because of the existing condition and the nature of there aren't any services, there's no heating, whatever happens in this building, there will be a certain degree of intervention required in order to bring it up to, I say modern day standards, but a usable space. And as part of the application, the applicant is just given an indication, excuse me, of some of the repairs that are being proposed. So they'll restore the wallpaper, deal with the blown plaster to stabilise the ceiling, and they'll put some secondary glazing on the windows to improve the energy efficiency of the building, but they'll need to obviously sand and make good the woodwork. So as I said, the harm needs to be considered within the concept of the public benefits. And I think the award of the government funding, which was given to regenerate the Royal Arcade and Boscombe, recognised in itself that the scheme would result in significant public benefits. Other public benefits, as I've touched upon, it would bring a vacant and dilapidated building back into use through its repair and refurbishment, potentially generating an income which could be reinvested into the ongoing maintenance and repairs of the building, job creation, increasing footfall in the arcade, and to Boscombe as a building was hopefully becoming a destination, providing a comfortable working environment for users of the building, and to provide affordable commercial workspaces, and hopefully to improve public perception of the building and the area. The scheme also takes the opportunity to improve the energy efficiency of the building through the use of photovoltaics and secondary glazing to improve the carbon footprint of the building. So overall, it's concluded that the scheme will result in harm, but that it would be outweighed by the public benefits arising from the scheme as a whole. It's considered that the proposals that will therefore preserve the overall special historic interest and significance of the building, preserving it for future generations. And that is that's a heritage benefit as well as a public benefit. So therefore the listed building application has been recommended for refusal, has been recommended for approval. Mine was elsewhere then. It's been recommended for approval subject to the conditions that are in the report, and 2 further conditions relating to a contract for works being agreed and details of phasing of works on site. And if my members were minded to approve the application and happy with the conditions, then it's suggested that the final wording of those conditions could be delegated to the head of planning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Ashley. Yeah, it was useful to hear that part, but yeah, we will take them separately for formal. So, Councillor Le Brevin.
Thank you. I'm going back to what was in the original planning application, the original presentation, and I'm looking for a bit more information about the food hall. We've already heard, well, from both presentations, of the loss of 4 retail units for the lifts and toilets, and the partial loss for the waste. I'm not quite sure whether the residual parts of those will be usable for resale or anything. I don't know what the plans are, but I'm particularly concerned to know for the food hall how many of the remaining retail units after the others have been lost will be needed for the food hall, because I assume some will be needed for the preparation of the food and the storage of the food. It won't all be in the open arcade area, I assume, but I need clarification of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. We don't have those details at the moment because obviously, as I mentioned before, even like those F-class uses hasn't been specified, because the aim of this permission is to secure some uses which will allow to bring this site back to active use both on ground floor and upper floors. So those food courts, those could be even independent, in my view, could be even independent shop units within outside the existing units. That's my understanding. And also it could be a part of some of those existing units. But as I said before, we don't have any specific uses shown on those plans, and the aim of having this E-class uses is to provide more flexibility for future investors. And also, I just want to make I want to point out some of those details submitted within the planning statement. Like there are apparently there are identified 5 vacant units within the ground floor, which forms part 23% of the total number of units on site. And within the provided details, we can see that even when we have some loss of those existing units, there will be increase of more active units on site. So hopefully this will answer your question. But as I said before, we don't have like specific units right now shown on those plans.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pedder?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gillett.
Very simple question, I hope. So something like the science zone, could that be class F or class E, potentially?
Mr. Kulik?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
So there's a science zone that's sort of educational, but could that, in a sense, be class F or class E? Or would you say, oh, it's educational, so there has to be a class? I mean, there's the Sainsbury's near my house. It's a class E, but they've got a little learning centre in there, which they sneak in under class E. Maybe I shouldn't report them, but
Yeah.
But could the science zone be effectively a class F or a class E?
No, there are like specific uses within class F, so they are different than E-class uses. And what we've got with this scheme is the proposal to have up to 400 square meters, which is not specified so far on those plans, of those F-class uses. And they are mainly like, we've got those F1 and F2 uses. So F1 is learning and or non-residential institutions, and local community uses are under F2. So again, I think that the whole aim of this application is to have some additional F-class uses on upper floors to provide some extra spaces for local community and some local investors.
Councillor Gillett, you want to add any more?
No. That also, I'm not quite sure. So could the science zone be an F1? It's kind of educational. Yeah.
If it is, if it's predominant use educational, then yes, so it could be F class.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
I've got about 4 questions. Because it's had residential permission to build for 10 years now, and it's not actually been done. Might the owner, because there's a complication with the owner because the council aren't the owners, but might the owner be more inclined to develop a commercial use rather than residential, because there's quite a lot of adverse legislation if you're a private landlord. There's quite a lot of things that would put you off. Whereas with commercial property, you've got none of those problems. You haven't got to worry about Section 21, Section 8, everything like that. Do you think do you think that it's more likely to actually be developed with the commercial by the owner because of that?
Mr. Kulik, and I know you touched on it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. It's really hard to answer that because obviously we've got a different application out in front of us, and some of those legal considerations or civil matters are not obviously planning considerations. So obviously we're balancing the scheme against both local and national planning policy. It's really hard. I mean, the aim of this application is obviously to provide some flexibility, and probably the main point is to bring back some active users, even not non-residential, on site. And as it was presented by Catherine, especially upper floors require some action, and basically we need some investment in this building.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, it just occurred to me that basically, if I owned the building, I would rather have commercial units in there in this climate, because it's because
there'll be
it's just got harder and harder for private landlords. The other thing is, could you second question? Would it be possible if somebody put an application in for part residential, part business? Would that create problems? So
I think
quite a lot of offices.
Yeah, I mean that'll be different assessments. Obviously we have to take different assessment in terms of noise, loss of privacy, and I would say probably noise impact will be the most important one, because there's the Royal Arcade is next to O2 venue. So as you might expect, with some live events, it might be a noisy environment next door. But as I said, it's a separate assessment, and in case we will have some proposal for residential development on site, we will discuss it. But with this scheme, probably it's more effective to have office spaces within the building, in my view, as it is right now. But obviously we need separate assessment for residential users. But
okay, just a hypothetical question. I was going to say, are there any advantages, because you've said it under 6.3, 6.4, it's not considered habitable at the moment. What's the advantage of Class E and Class F in terms of development to make it habitable?
Yeah, the main advantage is what was discussed by Catherine. So we can refurbish this building and bring it back to active use. So as you could see on Catherine's presentation, obviously all those floors require some action. So technically any use which could refurb this building and with some additional money and investment could actually help this building. So
thank you. Final question. At the moment, I think the arcade shuts either at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It's got restricted hours. I don't know, did you find out who pays for the security of the building? Because obviously if you have a food hall or a business in there, you might want to have it open for longer hours.
I mean, we didn't condition, as far as I'm concerned. Let me just double check the officer's report. We can always add some condition restricting working hours within the building, but then a separate matter will be on-site management plan, which will be internal and which will be run by the site owner. Again, it's not purely material planning consideration, but what we can do, we can restrict some working hours on site and opening hours through condition.
Okay, obviously, if we get to that stage, we need to think about the retail as well as if there's businesses, they might want to be a bit more flexible. So think about that condition. Are there any, Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at this, I was believing that the regeneration of Boscombe was really steeped in arts and creativity and supporting creative industries. I'm just looking at this and I'm just a bit disappointed, I have to say, that it's a food hall being proposed for use of such an incredible space, and that it's not being opened up for local artists. And however, I do note that there is the unspecified suggestion for the Class F, where I guess, is it possible that arts and creative industries could get some of the space on the back of that?
I also note that the applicant is absent, and that's a real shame, because being able to talk with them and hear a bit more about their plans would have been really helpful, and sort of puts a bit of doubt there for me about how committed they are to this. And also, I would be concerned about the loss of 4 units and a partial loss of 2 other units, and whether we'd be granting change of use for something that actually couldn't be delivered because there wouldn't be sufficient space or sufficient units to actually make it sustainable. So I'd like to understand a bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kulik, about first of all the change of use, the flexible use of F class. Is that
Yes. Yeah. So under F class, so F1, we've got under F1B display of box for of art. So this could be done through F class use, but my understanding is with an E class use for retail sale, if the artist wants to sell their goods, it could be done under E class. So depends, is it going to be just purely display of art, or actually the main use will be selling those goods, which could be done through E class. So hopefully this will answer your question.
And then what was the second part?
Sorry, I know there was quite a few bits. Concerns about whether, with the loss of the 4 units and the partial units, whether that would actually leave sufficient space for the proposals to be sustainable. But also, I would note Philip Stanley Watt's comment with regards to the businesses that are already in the arcade, some of which are providing immense public benefit and value.
Is that come under your remit, Mr. Kulik, about the viability of the scheme and research?
Yes, there was obviously a separate document provided by the applicant. In their view, actually, the scheme could be viable and effective for future on-site users. And also, I want to point out that many of those floor spaces wouldn't be affected through this scheme. So in terms of the floor space provision, there will be almost the same user space proposed under the current scheme, obviously apart from those units which will be lost. But then on the other hand, we've got some vacant units right now on site, and technically this scheme could provide more benefits to the community by providing more units, more active users on site through those flexible uses.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions? Okay, if we now move on to the debate. Don't know if Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just going through the actual application form here, and I appreciate that it's normal practice to redact certain information, but bearing in mind the applicant here is the council, to see so much redacted information when we're supposed to be open and honest about what we're doing. And I'll just reiterate the point I made in, I think, the point of order with you, Mr. Chair, is the fact that yet again we have no representation from the applicant when that applicant is BCP Council. I think is pretty poor, and I shall be raising this outside of this committee as a matter of order and as a question, I think, probably to the relevant committee. Firstly, I actually take on board what some of the representations made here. And a little while ago, when we were looking at the Boscombe Regen strategy, I did actually have a walk around the whole of Boscombe, reacquaint myself with Boscombe and some of the shops and that are in the Royal Arcade. Now, I completely agree that this is a real jewel in the crown of Boscombe. And what I would have liked to have heard from the applicant is how this fits in with the overall improvement scheme. We heard here about some potential community uses, yet it was only a couple of months ago we approved a new new scheme which had a new community centre, and how that would work together. So again, I appreciate that it's outside of this application, but it would have lent incredible weight to know how it worked in the wider Boscombe's regen scheme, and bearing in mind this is public money that's coming out, I think it would have made us considering the balance here quite different, as in the benefits that are gained as against the loss or basically the works happening to the heritage aspect. I have eaten at the social cafe there. I think it is a fantastic, lovely space, and I think the proposal to have a food court isn't contrary to, in my opinion, the heritage and how this area works. However, I do appreciate there's a vinyl record shop, and there's a shop that sells sort of teacups and old china, and they are lovely shops, but there is a lot of provision for antiques in Boscombe as a whole, and in fact it's one of the charms of parts of Boscombe and running down towards Folkestone that we have a large range of independent retailers at the non-chain end of the business, and yet next door we have McDonald's, probably one of the largest chains on the planet, next door. So as a provision, I think it sits the arcade sits very well, and I think we have to recognise here the potential improvement here of having a regen done here. But I hear what other councillors have said here about, well, we had a scheme on here for residential and it wasn't developed, and we've got a scheme here now for potentially commercial offices, and how do we know that this is actually going to go ahead, and a potential loss of residential. On the residential here, I mean, Councillor Canavan mentioned a lost forever, and I put that in quotation marks. I don't actually believe it is lost forever. There is always the possibility of removing lifts, removing reblocking up doorways. As we see, one of the aspects of this application is to actually remove some of the blocked in windows and doorways, as we could see on the rear of the property, sort of exposed block work where people have just gone and obviously blocked it in, and to restore that, I think is to add to the heritage value if they're obviously restored sensitively. And I know that's coming on to the second part of the application. I'm actually very minded to support this. It's not, and I think a number of councillors, I think Councillor Williams, Councillor Canavan have mentioned, is this what we want for the Royal Arcade? Unfortunately, it's the only application we have in front of us at the moment for, and having been involved in refurbishment of a lot of buildings of this age, one thing I'm very aware of is the longer you leave buildings to deteriorate, the more expensive it gets and the more heritage you lose. So, I've been in buildings that have lost the vast proportion of their plaster work because buildings are not being looked after. And this would seem like one of these cases that, it is a case of undertaking the refurbishment work and alterations to preserve the arcade. And for me, the key aspect is when you walk in those either pairs of doors, is you're welcome with a beautiful, well-lit space, and from it's the walking through the arcade bit to the Sovereign Centre, which is a completely different experience. I'm sure anybody that's walked through the Royal Arcade to the Sovereign Centre will appreciate that you go from the lovely Victorian period to the really beautiful 1970s shopping mall that I'm sure will be heritage listed at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tarman.
Thank you.
Councillor Leffernan.
Thank you. Looking at the current state, or the traditional state of the building, the shops were built, as far as I can see, to reflect what was the tradition of many shops at the end of the 19th century and for many years thereafter. People opening a shop basically in their front room, living above it, behind it, storing below, and that is the pattern basically as it still exists. So access to the upper floors, as I understand it, was only from individual shop units. So it's not at all what would be needed now. And it certainly wouldn't be. I mean, I would love to see flats up top, but we would have to do an awful lot of this work or something very similar to provide access to them, because they wouldn't be accessed from each individual shop unit, because the people living in the flats would almost certainly have absolutely nothing to do with the retail units. They wouldn't be the owners, managers working in the retail units. So a lot of it might not be lifts in those locations, but a lot of what we would need to do would be to provide access to the upper floors. It would need the photovoltaic, it would need the insulation. An awful lot of it would be needed in some at least similar form. So I think any use of the building in the future, as I say, is going to need that sort of work or something very similar. We know there's been an application approved for conversion of the upper stories to flats for 10 years and more, and nothing's been done. So what's to guarantee if another application was made now, it would be enacted? We know from experience with this committee, we've agreed and approved loads of applications and we're still waiting. Nothing's happened. And I don't want to see this happening again with the Royal Arcade. I mean, I think the one thing we probably can all agree on is that the Royal Arcade has got to be preserved, has got to be not that we don't want the ground floor, the retail units falling into the same state as the upper floors have fallen into. And this is an opportunity to do something about it. And I think we're in danger of making the perfect the enemy of the good, or I can't remember the exact expression. This to me looks like a very viable application. It's taking great steps to not only preserve the building but bring it back into a use in a currently needed form. One thing I would like to see, but usually we have a condition in about work to be undertaken within 3 years, and that or started within 3 years. As far as I can see, there's nothing in the conditions about that, and I don't know whether it's possible, but I would like to see a condition that if we agree this, work must start within a year, so that we're not hanging around, and if it doesn't get done in that time or get started in that time, if there's no obvious movement in that time, that it's open for further action, whatever that would be. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Firth.
Well, Chair, just to comment on that last point, so I'm just trying to pull up the report myself. I suspect this is actually an anomaly of the system rather than anything else. So it should certainly include a condition as regards commencement. I suspect, I understand, because I've been told this before, because of the way this happens for Bournemouth, they tend to not appear automatically, and it should appear automatically. There is in fact a provision in the law that says there would be a deemed condition anyway that would impose it, even if you didn't. But Chair, I would say if members were minded to approve this, it would be absolutely right to put on a commencement condition. It should be commenced within 3 years, which is the standard.
Could we add 1 year?
You can actually impose such time as you consider appropriate, but you need to justify why you are departing from the standard of 3 years. So the standard condition is it shall be commenced within a period of 3 years. But if you want to depart from it, you can legally, but you need to justify why.
Thank you. Was that a move, Councillor?
Well, I would still stick with a year, because it's not like we're starting from a bare site. Presumably the developers will not be having to get finance in quite the same way that a 10-story block of flats would need. If they put the application in, I hope it means that they want to do it and that they are intending to get a move on. And it's only start within a year. It's not complete within a year. But if within a year there's been no indication of any movement, anything happening, then I think we need to look at it.
Councillor Martin.
It's my understanding that the owners and the applicants are two different people, and so I think a year is too short, because there's going to be quite a few legal wranglings between the owner and the applicant. Like this you can go ahead and do it. They may not have the money. We don't know what the circumstances are. So I think stick to the 3 years. Just, I know it sounds, yeah, I would prefer the 1 year, but I think for legal reasons, just for practical reasons, I think you've got to retain the 3 year.
Burridge, want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to make the point also, if it were granted, the case officer report does include a substantial number of planning conditions which would need to be discharged. And I think just need to be mindful that that's going to take some time as well. And I would just question whether a year would be sufficient for all those details.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Gillett. Okay, Councillor Cullen, is this a new point?
Yeah, on top of that, I'd add the fact it's an old building. There will be surveys, birds, bats, bees, asbestos, anthrax, everything that needs to be done at this point. And that's and then on top of that, we have a new procurement bill coming through Parliament, which will be applicable. And I know council officers should be receiving training fairly soon on the new Procurement Act. So we've got to train officers, and then we have to go through a procurement process. And I can guarantee that will take more than a year to get meaningful work started. So I just caution that we stick to 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. It's a question, please pardon my ignorance, but it's just to pick up on the concerns about the loss of residential units. Is there anything that we could, if we were minded to accept this application, is there anything that we can put in as a condition that doesn't completely close the door on that as an opportunity? And is there anything that we can put in terms of the community use that would preserve arts, heritage, creative industries within that?
And Mr. Burridge.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the residential, obviously, as has been said before, this application, we need to consider the application that's before us, and that doesn't include a residential element. The case officer report does reference the relevant policy, that being 6.3 of the old local plan, and that is included in the planning balance. So there is consideration of that point. I think I'll make the point, and has been said before, that whilst if we grant planning permission, this doesn't include a residential use, that doesn't preclude a residential use coming forward in future. And quite substantial works would be needed to facilitate the works would be needed for the building to be used for residential purposes. So I think just be mindful of the fact that those sorts, the extent of works would be quite substantial, as they would be in this case. But it might be argued that the works that they were doing for this scheme might perhaps pave the way for a different use in future. But in terms of this application, if we grant this application, then I don't think there's anything we can do that would, on this particular planning permission, relate it to residential, because that is not what the application is for. It's not on the plans, and it's not in the description of development. With regard to the community uses, I think, well, we would be approving the plans that have been submitted. And just looking at the plans, sorry, I had them at some point. The case officers referred to the E use class and the F use class. So, and in the description of development, we have got, it doesn't specify the use classes, but it does relate to retail and other commercial uses. So I don't see that that would prevent those sorts of uses which you possibly have in mind.
Thank you. And just before you come back, Councillor, Mr. Firth.
Yeah, just to add on to one point that Mr. Burridge just said, you referenced policy 6.3. Well, as members will note from the report, paragraphs 1551, it's paragraph 6.3 and paragraph 6.4 that's referenced in relation to this issue of balancing any loss of residential now as against the benefits of the scheme. And that balancing exercise you will find expressly referenced in paragraph 76 of the report, if that's of any assistance. So paragraphs 50, 51 and 76, I think, address those points.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Did I hear correctly that there was 400 square metres of space that wasn't specified but could be that was within the F use. So could there be some conditions applied to the use of that to ensure that independent businesses or local creative industries you know, don't miss out on the opportunity there?
Thank you. I think the specification is up to 400. So could we say stipulate that yes, it's got to be an F-class use, or?
I mean, Chair, my initial thought was I think you have to be slightly careful to make sure you're not departing from the description of the development. You can, to some degree, as long as it's within the scope of the description of the development, put in conditions that would factor its use. I'm just not sure how easy it would be to come up with wording to cover what's being suggested. I don't know if Mr. Burrow's got any thoughts on that, but I need to understand perhaps a bit more exactly what the council is thinking of as far as the conditions are concerned.
I think reading the report, and obviously they specify in providing a permanent skills lab for IT and other technical services. So whilst they don't call art, they do mention community space. So I think this may be where the ward councillors engage with a regen team and get the actual uses of community space and continuum of science lab maybe taken on. But was there any other points, Councillor Armstrong? Councillor Martin.
I agree. I will say I agree with Councillor Armstrong. I think the problem that that the owners didn't develop it as residential was because it maybe have been too onerous, and I think we ought to err on the side of caution of making stipulations which are more onerous for the owner. I mean, they're in it for profit, you know, whether we like that or not. That's reality. And I think if you start to say, oh, you've got to provide these display places where they may not be able to get cash for that, they're less likely to develop it. And at the end of the day, we need this to be developed. Like Councillor Tarling said, the longer we leave it, the more it's going to deteriorate, the more expensive it's going to be. And I just think we ought to be getting on with it. That's my view. Incidentally, about the food hall, I think that's there's a big, obviously not on the same scale, but in Southampton they've got a wonderful food hall that works amazingly well. My question would be, would it be sort of, when you say in terms of the food hall, will it be you've got to buy food and sit in the immediate space outside the place where you bought it, or can you sit anywhere? Will it be sort of a free for all like the Southampton West Quay food hall?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Mr. Kulik showed a visual. Would you think that is public space to sit, or would you think it is restricted to buying within?
Yes, my understanding is it will be a public available space. So the whole point is to provide more footfall within the site, bring more people on site, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be restricted. That's my understanding. There will be some spaces for obviously for members of public that can sit and obviously have a chat and enjoy the site.
Thank you. Was that a move, Councillor Martin?
That's fine. I just wanted to know, you know, because that would make a big difference. Because like I like to, when I'm with a friend, I like to go to the Southampton food hall because, you know, they can buy what they want and I can buy what I want and we can still sit together. So that works really, really well. And also there may be people with disabilities, you know, diabetes, things like that, that want to bring their own food and sit and eat with a friend and things like that. So I think that's quite important. I think it's quite a nice space to eat in, especially in bad weather. It means you can sit outside, but you're inside. You know, you can be protected from rain and things. So I think that's a great idea. And also, I did sort of think that in quite a lot of cafes, people do sell art or they display art for sale. So I think that would fit in with the art theme of Boscombe as well. Yeah.
Was that proposed?
Yeah, I would definitely be in support of this application. So
is it proposed?
Yeah, I'll propose that we accept the scheme, yes, that we grant it.
No additional conditions, still the complete, start within 3 years and.
Just, yeah, start within 3 years, yeah. That's my proposal, yeah.
Sorry, seconder, councillor Tarling. Any other debate? No, so if we're happy to remove, councillor, Mr. Parish.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify, so that you're moving with the recommendation, that's on the basis of one additional condition, and that's, oh, 3, sorry, you can talk. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. For the listed building application, there were 2 additional.
Oh, we'll come to that shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the recommendation as set out, but confirming that it's complete. Start within 3 years. Yeah. To grant it. So the proposal is to grant as set out. So if you are for the application, if you indicate now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you're against, abstention.
1.
So that is approved to grant that application. Thank you. So we're now moved to the listed approval. Now, do members want to hear from the officer's summary again, or are they happy with the previous explanation from the officers? What's the view? Do you want a quick summary again? No, you're happy to move in. And so if we go to questions first relating to the, oh, sorry, speakers. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, we got supporter, Mr. Stanley Watts, please.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Well, I was going to talk about the history of this building when it was very much well articulated by the heritage officer over there, but it was built by Archibald Beckett, a noted architect at the time that built many other buildings like arcades. But I very much support this plan application because it needs restoring. This building is of national significance. We've gone through all that already, but as a neighbour that actually lives opposite the building, it is very scary actually watching the bricks fall off the building. It's a kind of health and safety thing, not just for me, but all the residents that actually live in the building, especially those at the top of the building. So with that, I'd just like to say I support this, but I'd like to know exactly when the restoration will start. But I understand it's going to take 3 years, maybe. It could take longer, but it's obviously down to the costs and the money and the financing of the building. So if the council haven't got the money, they can't do the restoration. So they actually need to get into partnership with a national heritage body like Historic England or Civic Voice or the National Trust, different organisations in partnership working to approve funding to actually restore the building, to put finance into the building. Without that, nothing can happen. So I hope this application gets passed here today, but something will happen to the building. It needs restoring, it needs protecting for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley Watts. So, Councillor Canavan, did you want to come in again now on heritage?
No, thank you for the report that you took on the earlier item. I think that was really helpful to hear that. Just in terms of the heritage and the balance, which was referred to in the presentation, how you balance the harm to the heritage asset as against the public benefit. I am reassured by what's been done. My remaining concern about it is to do with the lift. Now, as I understand it, in order to bring those upstairs spaces into use of any kind, you're going to have to put a lift in there because the old staircases would be inappropriate. Should we put it like that? So the lift is essential. And in order to create the lift, unfortunately, you have to take some of the retail units out of action in order to install the lift. But the kind of lift that you want to introduce, I think, is an issue in that space, and whether or not there is any consideration that can be given to whether you can minimise the harm to the asset by the nature of the lift that you install. I think the internal features that have been referred to, you know, are going to have to take a hit in order to do the refurbishment that's been referred to. But Mrs. Stanley Watts is absolutely right. Something needs to be done to that building before, you know, something serious internally happens and it becomes unstable. In fact, parts of it are already unstable, but let's not dwell on that too much. So yes, something needs to be done, but I do have the remaining concern about the nature of the construction of the lift. And just finally, Chair, let me say that 3 years debate, as opposed to the 1 year debate that we just had recently, is an important factor. The ownership of this space is really not straightforward. And you know, you talk about the owner. Well, in fact, the owner, there's also a leaseholder as well. So it is really quite complicated. You know, I think 3 years erring on the side of caution is probably right. This is not going to be straightforward, and the council do not have the money, so they will have to look elsewhere for the funding in order to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Canavan. Mrs. Ashley, can you cover the part about the lift and your understanding of that? And do you also know the fundings? I think either you or Mr. Kulik mentioned about funding secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the funding, at the time the applications were submitted, there was some funding, and this is covered in paragraph 28 of the listed building report. But BCP Council decided not to pursue the Royal Arcade project due to rising costs and the shortfall in funding at the current time, and that the funding is being reallocated to other towns' funds project. However, they still wanted the application to remain available to determine, because they understand or consider that securing the consent will ensure that the permission is already in place if in future the owner wishes to pursue the proposals or any other investor or public sector funding source becomes available. So, you know, there's obviously, we're talking about 3 years, 1 year. At the moment, there is no one to take this forward at this current point in time. With regards to the lift proposals, when the scheme originally came in, it was proposed to take out 4 of the retail units and to provide 4 lifts, 1 to each wing of the building. Concern was expressed in relation to the impact that this would have in relation to the loss of that many units, or particularly on the ground floor. And to reduce the impact, the number of lifts was reduced to 2 main lifts, but with some smaller standard stair lifts providing access, more localised access to the upper floors. Consideration was given to the placement of the lift, and the applicant considered that placing the lift in the middle of the units would allow the architectural integrity of the room to still be appreciated, with a clearly modern intervention coming through in the centre of the room. And it was also decided to have the lift, the body of the lift being glazed, which again would make it quite lightweight and would allow views through it of obviously the features of the room as well. So consideration was given. Obviously, there are different ways of putting schemes forward. You know, the applicant could have decided to put a solid lift forward, or they could have put it at the side of the room rather than the middle of the room, but they've chosen to do it as shown on the application plans, and they've explained their justification for that, and we're happy with that approach. So we obviously taken our decision on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for confirming. So if we move to members' questions on the heritage side, obviously a lot of them have been covered already, so no further questions specifically. Councillor Martin.
If you install a glass lift, I'm going back to Southampton again. I do shop there a lot. Basically, John, if you go in the lift in John Lewis, that's a lovely glass lift, or you think it was lovely. It's actually filthy. Nobody cleans it. So I'm in favour of a solid lift with probably Victorian styling panels around. Yeah, you're still in the middle of the room, but there's panels around. So my question is who is going to maintain this? Because they look appalling after a bit. They look amazing when they first installed. 2 years down the line, they look like a pigsty.
Well, I think the arcade will be managed. Obviously, the floors will be swept, so whoever does the floor sweeping will be managing the bins and managing the lift. So I don't think there is a condition previously on the actual management, but yeah, there'll be a management company.
I think it's specialist cleaning of a lift. You can't. It's not just like done by the cleaner, because obviously it's moving equipment. It's not safe. And if John Lewis can't manage it, how the hell are we going to? This is what worries me.
Did you, Mr. Burridge? Did you?
I'll just highlight on the lift that there is condition 2, which does specifically require further details of the lift. There's a lot of extra information which is being required, which is notwithstanding the plans that we're going to, notwithstanding the plans that we have before us. Further details are required. There's a long list, and about 2/3 of the way down, it says details of the installation, style, appearance, and materials of all the lifts. So we do have that there. With regard to the maintenance, we don't have a condition on with regards to the maintenance of the lift or the cleanliness of it, but I would suggest, as the chair has just said, that would be a matter for the operators of the building to keep clean, and it wouldn't be a matter that we would specifically get involved with, particularly as it's inside a building which is under different ownership.
Thank you. Any other questions, or else we'll move straight into debate then, please? Any points to raise? No. Any moves?
I'll move.
Councillor Le Pedman.
Yes, I move that we accept the proposal with the 3-year condition added. I was looking at Mr. Firth.
Mr. Burridge, did you want to?
No, sorry,
Right. So do we have a seconder, Councillor Tarling? And so we've got a proposal to approve as sets out.
Sorry, Chair. I think the officer, heritage officer, requested 2 further conditions to be added as well.
If you want to outline those, Miss Ashley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was just to include 2 additional conditions relating to the insertion of the lifts, toilet and bin store, and details about sequencing and phasing of works on site, just to ensure, I think, that because of the degree of harm arising from the lift, that we can be sure that the scheme will go ahead if that damage is done effectively to the building, that it's tied up as part of the comprehensive redevelopment of the scheme. That will require a little bit of wording, those 2 conditions. So I think if members were happy, we could suggest the final wording could be delegated to the head of planning. Thank you, Chair.
And the proposer and seconder happy with that? Yeah. Okay.
Chair, just I think head of planning operations is his current title, but yeah, just that's what it would have to be. That's fine.
Okay, so we've got a proposer and a seconder. Any other debate? So we'll move straight to the vote. So there's approval for listed building consent. If you're for it, vote now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. We shall move straight into the next application, which is 6D Cabbage Patch Car Parks, 22 St Stephen's Road, Bournemouth. Do we have Mr. Hubbard?
Yeah, good morning, members. Hope you can hear me and see the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So this application relates to a site known as the Cabbage Patch Car Park, which is in St Stephen's Road in Bournemouth. This application is for a minor material amendment to add an electricity substation to the previously approved scheme. So the substation is required to serve the electricity needs of the approved development, which was for 11 flats. So this is the site here. It was a small council car park used by employees until the consent was granted in 2019. It's at the end of St Stephen's Road where it meets the Wessex Way, so the site is very close to the A338 Wessex Way there. And then you've got the central gardens down here with the tennis courts. It's within the Merrick Park and Talbot Woods conservation area. So this shows an aerial view of the site. It's sort of on the edge of the Bournemouth town centre area, which is down here. You can see it's not that far from the BCP Civic Centre location, which is here. The area's mostly got blocks of flats or older villas, and there's a lot of mature trees around, as you can see on this aerial photo. So this is a closer view of the site. The building was evidently under construction at the time this was taken. At the rear, there's a steep bank which goes down to Bourne Avenue, and there's a public footpath and steps next to the side of the site, between the site and the Wessex Way. So this is a view from the Wessex Way showing the front of the building. You can see that there is a road sign here which probably obscures most of the view of the proposed substation behind it. And then a view of the side of the building from the Wessex Way a little further along. The substation is roughly here where this red star is. You've got to remember that this is a sort of dynamic view as traffic is travelling along the Wessex Way, so the site's not really that prominent in the views along there. So I visited the site this week and I found that the substation has already been put in on the site. So here's some views from the side where the footpath is. You can see it in here behind the boundary railings. It's coloured green, so it's sort of blends in with the surroundings quite well. It's not that prominent, and it'll probably become less prominent over time as the landscaping matures around it. So a view from the front, you can just about see it at the back of the site when you look in from the front, but you have to go fully into the car park area to get a good view of it here. But again, it's set back right in the rear corner of the site. So the site plan, this is the location of the substation here, at that rear corner of the site. Some elevations, it's approximately 2.3 meters tall, 3.1 meters wide and 2.8 meters deep. So that gives a total volume of around 20 cubic meters. That's below the permitted development maximum of 29 cubic meters. So the substation could potentially be added as a permitted development addition at a later date. But the applicants have opted to amend the original planning permission as the development was not complete at the time that this was submitted. So just for context, these are the original approved elevations. The scheme was a 5-storey block of flats with this undercroft parking area. It was a council application and as I said, it appears that the development's been completed and it has in fact begun to be occupied. The approved floor plans, just quickly, shows 11 flats. They were intended for affordable housing, and it was approved in October 2019 by the planning committee at that time. So the proposed substation, it serves specifically this development, but it's located in a relatively discreet location at the rear of the site. It is visible, as you've seen, but it's not overly prominent, and it doesn't detract from the character and appearance of the conservation area. There are no other neighbouring properties around these sides of the site, so there's no sort of impact on any neighbouring properties. Occupants of the flats themselves are all above the ground floor because of this undercroft parking area, so they're all sort of raised up. There's no visual impact to the occupants of the flats. And having visited the site, and assuming that the substation is now in operation because the development is partly occupied, it wasn't generating an audible level of noise. And I believe if it were to emit noise under sort of greater loads or demands for electricity, it's very unlikely, in my view, to be greater than the more significant background traffic noise of the Wessex Way. There is a condition, or there was a condition on the original planning consent, which required information in respect of the specification for the windows and ventilation to ensure that there was no sort of noise impact to residents from that traffic. So the condition has been replicated on the proposal here. So that will provide comfort. There's no greater impact in terms of noise to future occupants. However, having visited the site and noted that this, it's at least in part occupied, I think I would suggest, if members are minded to approve this application, that the trigger point for the submission of the noise report under condition 12, certainly the verification report, should be amended to something like within 3 months of the date of this consent rather than prior to occupation of the development, because it already appears to be occupied, along with a provision for any further mitigation if necessary, as we don't appear to have had that report submitted on the original application. But beyond that, I consider the proposal is acceptable and it has been recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. So, members, any questions on the application? Councillor Tarling?
Yeah, thank you. As this is a retrospective application, and this may not be a planning issue, but just concerned that if you put a substation under the footprint of the building, that it needs to meet certain fire restrictions. Having retrospectively applied for a substation very close to the building, has the applicant given consideration to fire escape routes? I appreciate it's probably a building control issue, but and the rating of the substation.
Mr. Hubbard?
I'm afraid it's not something that I'm aware of. Yes, it would be a building control matter. I'm not aware that a substation would alter the sort of escape requirements for the building, but I'm not sort of overly familiar with the building regulations requirements on that, I'm afraid.
Okay, any other questions? No, if we just go straight into debate. Mr. Firth.
Chair, I was just going to say that, having just heard it's retrospective myself, I'm conscious, and I'm equally conscious of the fact we spent quite a long time last item talking about a condition relating to pre-commencement. That clearly isn't going to bite in this case, even though it does now appear in this particular application, because clearly they can't have a condition which says they can commence within 3 years when they've already commenced. It makes no sense. So, Chair, what I would say, and I think some of the other conditions might need tweaking as well, having had a very quick look at them, because I've just heard as well, it's part occupied, or there's some conditions requiring information to be provided before it should be occupied. Now, they may, of course, have all been discharged, because I suspect what's happened is these have been rolled over from the previous consent. But I think probably what would be sensible if members were minded to approve this is, if members were minded to approve it, give power to delegate to the head of planning operations to revise and amend the identified conditions to reflect that reflects the fact that this is a retrospective application, and the fact that it's partly occupied, and then the head of planning can tweak it as necessary to reflect those situations.
Thank you, Mr. Firth. That's useful. So anyone want to take a move then? Councillor Armstrong?
I'm not to move, it's to comment. It's another example of council giving itself planning permission as the applicant. Am I right in understanding? I just want to flag that as a bit of a concern, in terms, especially as we're highlighting that this is retrospective. I just wonder whether there's more that we can put in when we've got the council as the applicant.
I think
in
the
terms
main
of transparency and being able to just ensure that we've scrutinised something correctly. And again, pardon me for I'm quite new to this, but that just flags for me. That's right. Okay, I'd like to understand a bit more about that, and I wonder if how residents would feel about the council giving themselves planning permission without full scrutiny.
Yeah. So obviously the previous application where this is a minor amendment did come to committee, which all BCP applications come to committee. So we do the full scrutiny there. Obviously, it was only when they tried to hook into the electricity system that they said, the electric company said, no, you're going to have your own substation. So that wasn't known until they started building. So it is chicken and egg, really, that they'd moved forward, realised that they couldn't plug into the grid, they had to do their own substation. So it is, as far as the council, it was open to scrutiny. It came to a committee. The rationale for building council properties was approved, and obviously before that it would have come to full council because monies were allocated for the project. So it probably hit the full cabinet, scrutiny, full council, then planning committee. So it has gone full. This, as you say, we've come at the end of it, and it looks as though it's just a done deal because it's built out and the substation is built out and people are in there, but it has been through. I think it is just all about a timing issue. But okay, Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You pretty much said what I was going to say, but it's not uncommon that you make an application for a low voltage connection to a building, to find out that there's not sufficient capacity, and the regional electricity company will say you need a high voltage connection and a substation. So that's actually not uncommon for it to happen in this type of application, and for it to come to this committee, I think, is only by virtue of the fact that it is a council application. Otherwise this would be determined by an officer. Bearing that in mind, I'm happy to propose that we accept this motion as laid out.
Okay, that's an approval proposal to approve. Councillor Williams.
Excuse me, happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. Any other debate?
Chair, just to check, that's incorporating what was referenced by.
Yes, sorry, that's to delegate to the Director of Planning Operations to review the conditions, bearing in mind that this is a retrospective application.
Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. No further debate, so we shall move to the vote. So to approve, if you show now for.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's unanimous.
So that is approved as set out. Thank you for that. That now closes today's meeting.